Hello, Windward, and welcome to the Pencils Down podcast. In service of our mission to remediate our students' language-based learning disabilities, we take every instructional moment seriously, and we work to be intentional in everything that we do. This podcast is an opportunity for Jamie Williamson, our head of school, to have an informal series of unscripted conversations with different members of our community about who they are, what they care about, and what the Windward School means to them. And so, we're putting our pencils down, we're closing up our computers, and we're looking forward to sharing with you another conversation today.
Well, welcome to another episode of Pencils Down. I'm incredibly excited to spend some time with our wonderful guest today. This is year 27, right, Chris?
It is year 27.
Which is, like in this day and age, I do feel like so few people really come into a job, settle in, and stay for a bit. I think there's, I think that generationally, that idea of kind of landing in one space, finding your incredible rhythm there, and kind of staying is not as something people sort of think about as much. So just want to say thank you for an incredible 27 years. As we've been opening up the podcast, one of the things I've really enjoyed doing is taking a little bit of a moment to kind of express some gratitude, because there's a few times in life where you get to sit down and do what I will call kind of a full frontal assault of gratitude, right? Where I get to sort of say some nice things in somebody when they can't squirm away from me, right? So I'm taking a little liberty here, and so appreciate. It's been wonderful over the last 6 years to get to know you. I remember having conversation with you coming into this role, being on your campus. A few things that I have noticed about you during that time of working with you for 26 of your 27 years has been you have an incredible student focus. Like, you really show up for kids. Whether that's on the basketball court when you're coaching them, standing out in the morning when you're greeting kids, there is such a kindness and such a student focus that I really, really deeply appreciate. Also, too, as a former campus head when I was a principal at Springer, it was one of my favorite jobs I've ever had in my entire life, right? Only because I got to know all the kids. You got to be outside every morning. You got to be that face of a building coming in, part of the welcoming committee, part of the discharge committee at the end of the day. And every morning I walk into the middle school, you're out there, rain, snow, sleet, shine, whatever it happens to be. And then I pop upstairs sometimes, and then you're in the hallway. I don't remember if you remember the Scooby-Doo episode when they're at the amusement park and Dick Van Dyke is the ticket taker, the ride guy, the person at the haunted house. That's you. You're everywhere in that building, and I think kids do see you in that way. And I think it's so really incredible how you do get out in that community and make people feel seen and known. The other thing that I don't know that, folks here in our community, our parents especially, how well I think you do such a great job of taking care of our faculty and staff in that building, really making sure voices are lifted and heard, and I really appreciate that. And you can drain a three on the basketball court. Whenever we're in a clutch situation, Manhattan versus Westchester or the faculty staff basketball game, if you need a three dropped in a pinch, you're the guy.
Occasionally.
Yeah. I love the modesty here. You can just keep ripping them off, man. And the other thing that I don't think that anybody outside of our sort of leadership team probably has the sense of is that you are this absolute scheduling ninja. You have such a great way of seeing the schedule. I think scheduling is a gift that a lot of people, either you have it sometimes or you're not willing to work on getting it. But you have put some really great work into thinking about how those pieces move together. It's just been a real pleasure to work with you over the last 6 years. And I just want to say thank you for everything you do for our kids, families, and faculty and staff. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I want to first start by thanking you for having me on this podcast, because in 27 years of being at Windward, I maybe have done one Compass or Beacon article. So it's nice to be recognized. I'm not really that kind of person that goes out to look for it. I do my job because my love of the kids and wanting to see them do great things. So I'm really, kind of honored to be here and to be able to have this conversation. And I'm also grateful for Windward and all that I've experienced. To the teachers, to the staff, to the administration, and under your leadership, I've watched us continue to thrive and drive our mission home. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, I'm grateful for my family. They're my inspiration and continue to make me strive to be better. Yeah,
and I so appreciate that. And I do think that the work that you're doing at the school right now, there's just so many great things. And I I hope you know, like every time I go out, like either to a lunch or dinner with a family, or even our trustees who had a kid at the Westchester Middle School, like your name comes up. There's a few names that like always come up. Marilyn Hunt shows up a lot. Pat Gay shows up a lot. Ruth Mahoney shows up a lot in these conversations. And so you are somebody who parents talk about, as that steady state, that presence in their child's life, that face that really kind of helped move some of these things along. And so there's a lot of gratitude, whether people show up and tell, I'm sure they do, but just want you to know that you are, you're part of the ethos in this world. So, and so kind of let's maybe go back in time a little bit, because you made a decision 27 years ago to come work here. My guess is there was a lot of places you could have gone and done some work as a teacher, and you've stayed, and you've kind of been growing in your leadership career. But I always like to ask the question and understand, like, why Windward? So you're here, like, why be part of this community?
So that's a great question. It wasn't purposeful. I had finished up my master's and did my student teaching and was working in a middle school teaching. And because at that time there was too many teachers, they wanted to move me to fourth grade, and I knew my heart was in middle school. So I started to look through Kearney Sandown. They gave me the name of a school. Never heard of Windward before. Mm-hmm. Remember driving up for the interview and this manor house, thinking, this is the school or this is the head's office. I interviewed, and they had a science position open because it was late August. Science teacher had just left. So I wasn't even being hired as an assistant. They needed someone to step in and teach right away. So that was intriguing. And also, as I interviewed, as you mentioned, Marilyn Hunt was here running the sports program, the athletic program. And she said, if you come here, you can coach too. And those are two of my favorite things, teaching and coaching. And so that was like sold. Yeah. And really the plan was, a couple years of teaching and get a little closer to home and not have a big commute. But 1 year led to another. And I think in my third year, I had a homeroom full of all boys, and it became noticeable that I was getting some of the behavior challenge students who needed a little extra supervision. And shortly after that, I would be teaching, and they'd be sent in my room while I'm teaching. And as I started to do that, the administration started speaking to me about being a dean, and that parlayed into becoming the assistant division head at the time. And kind of just working my way up. And you've already mentioned, but the best part about it was getting to know all the students rather than just the ones I teach. I feel like that's such an important role for me. I love teaching, love seeing the group of kids that I would have in class, whether it be math or science, but seeing kids every day and different facets of their lives, whether it be on the field playing or in the gym, in their classroom when they're working hard on their language arts or their social studies. That was where I really felt I needed to be. And so I continued to work here and said, this is a place. And really what was endearing to me, and I tell the teachers this all the time, so they don't get mad at me, but my favorite thing is the kids. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the students that attend the school, but I also value the people that I work with and the relationships that I've made over time. And I feel like the team we have at Westchester Middle School is a really strong, connected group who works really hard. And it's not just the faculty, it's the staff, it's the administration, feel supported. And so, have stuck it out because I really want to be there.
I think in education, I think that I love having good colleagues, and that's an important part. I will never diminish that part of it. But I do think for a school like ours, like you really got to be here and show up for kids, right? That's the first line of defense. And I want to go back to something you said, because my first job in education after I'd sort of finished my training at Miami was in a middle school. Right? I'd done elementary, and I loved elementary. I'd done high school. I had kind of dabbled in the middle school arena. And I worked at a public middle school, about 600, 700 kids. Was a school psychologist and the sixth grade counselor for about 4 years. And middle school is a very special place. Either you're in or you're not, you know? Like it's a reflection of the kids. I think that where they're out developmentally. I think the staff has a lot of fun with that age group. If you really appreciate that age group and you can handle all the ups and downs of sixth grade kids come in. They're just like still a little bit more elementary sort of minded. Your 8th graders are a little bit more mature. Your 7th grade kids are like, you don't know where they're going to show up on any given day.
True.
Like it's really a lot of fun. And it's just such a really interesting place to work, and I really enjoy it. You mentioned a couple of things along the way I want to kind of highlight a little bit too, is that you've had so many memories. And I love that, Maryland was, kind of one of your first intros to this, and that you probably got nudged to coach a little bit at the time. But if you could reflect back on, a really rich 27-year experience, my guess is there's a few memories from that time that kind of pull up a little bit, right? That kind of highlight. Do you have a favorite memory of your time here?
I think when I think back, going back a long time, there are a lot of good memories of just, being in a small community when I first started out. It felt like more like a family, because we were probably 120 students in the middle school. We've come a long way since then, 40 kids in a grade. And I think what for me is a recurring one is always going to graduation for our students. I think, no matter what year it is, just being, I don't even know if it's being part of it, because when I was a teacher, I just enjoyed going. But seeing the smiles and the happiness and the joy of succeeding in an area where they felt that wasn't possible in many ways has always been that one big memory. But there's been other great joys along the way. And I think, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about last year. Unfortunately, Amy Hughes was out on leave for a bit of time, and doubling up on duty for me. I just go to work. I don't really worry about that kind of stuff. I just have to take care of what needs to be done. And I think when I had my faculty luncheon and you were there, I do an end of the year speech. Always want to talk to them and congratulate those who are moving on and those who are leaving us. And, in the middle of my talk, one of the teachers came up, and Catherine Kaneko, with a big gift for me, and looked around the room, and everybody's standing and applauding. And it made me realize that they recognized the time and effort that I was putting in. And I always knew that I have a good relationship with the teachers, but it really made me feel like proud that, I wasn't expecting that, and I don't do that work to be recognized. I think it's nice to know that without doing all that, they wanted to share that moment with me. And it's one moment I'll never forget. And so I think that's probably because it's more recent. It's the best one I can think of, but there's been a lot of great memories at Windward. You mention it all the time. Students, who goes back to visit middle school? I would never have gone back to my middle school. Our kids come back, they want to visit, they could be 10, 15 years out of school, and still want to see their teachers and see the people who helped them get to where they are. And they still recognize that middle school was that starting point for them, that moment in life where they made a change that was going to help them out. And thanks to their parents' gift, here they are now.
Yeah. And I love how you frame that, this idea of a parent, the gift that they give their child, and the gift of Windward. I love that. Every time we have graduates, last 6 years, and we've had a couple like interesting years in there, right? We had our first virtual graduation my first year, which was bizarre. I'm so grateful for our tech team that figured out how to make all that work, but it was a little different. Then the next year we had to do this weird split because we had social distancing stuff. So one, just thank you for being with us in that process. For folks who are listening who don't realize this, I do want to take just a little station break here and say, all of the logistics, if you've been to a graduation at Windward in the last, how many years have you been planning this? Like 7, 8?
Yeah, probably 8.
Yeah, So any graduation that's occurred in the last 8 years, like you have been the planning hand in this. There are so many logistics: the tent, the tech, the food, the seats, the stage, the speaker. You've been such like an important part of that, and I love our graduation. I love hearing our alumni speaker who comes back and just really just projects this beautiful voice of inspiration to our kids. Hearing from our student council presidents in the process of that, hearing your remarks, hearing Jason's remarks or Danny's remarks when she was doing that, or Leslie's. It's been really wonderful to see that process kind of come full circle here for kids, because it really is, our graduation is really a massive celebration of our kids and the work that they've put in here. So thank you for that, because that is, I mean, really, like there's a lot of wrangling and herding of the old proverbial cats in that conversation, right? There's a lot of moving pieces, and then and not only that, like we have to think about the weather.
Wish we could control that. We can't do that.
But like just the idea of like I don't love how tense the lead up to graduation is, right? Mm-hmm. But it's very cathartic when it's over. But, like checking the weather like crazy. When does the tent go up? Does the ground wet? It's just, you do such a great job managing it on your campus. And I so appreciate all that work you do. I want to sort of transition a little bit here to a value conversation from a core values perspective. When I got here about 6 years ago, one of the things we did, because I had a lot of deep respect and love for the work that Windward has been doing historically. For a long, long period of time, we've been doing some great work. We have grown tremendously. And as a leader, it felt really important for me to kind of find a way to think about capturing the spirit of that in a really important and meaningful way. I've always kind of been drawn to the idea of we all are guided by some values in our work, right? Some things like you talked about your family. I would imagine so much of your work has been guided by your love and support of your family. And so we all have these things, whether they're kind of known or named just yet for some of us, that kind of push us forward and kind of motivate us and kind of, move us in a direction. And so when I got here, I wanted to find a way to capture Windward's voice in that. So we had everybody read Dare to Lead, which was a book I happen to love by Brene Brown. And then we did a series of book talks on the campus to talk about core values and how do we leverage those and how do we think about those and how do they really show up in our work, and why is it important for us to kind of name those as an institution and a school community? And out of that came this idea of community, impact, growth, and commitment. And there were some that I was planning that I was like scribbling down of like, I could see this thing kind of, because I can, you should be able to see core values in action, So when you reflect on sort of your thinking around core values, is there, one or two values that you have kind of like really reflected on and said, what, I really feel like this is super important to me and guides my day-to-day thinking?
Of the 4 core values we have now, or my own?
You're just your own.
Because I think they do run hand in hand. I remember our very first conversation with the administrative team. Mm-hmm. I think the only one that I had that was different was trust, because that's very important to me. Trust with the students, trust with the teachers, trust with the staff. But the other ones are really important to me. And the biggest one for me over the past few years is community. Mm-hmm. The sense of you're only here for a finite amount of time, unlike other schools that have the advantage of you're going 1 through 12 or K through 12. Yeah. And it's so important to build community in the time they're there. You don't have a lot of it. So if you look down it on a chart, it goes by pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. But building community is important for students to feel included, for teachers to feel included, whether they're, anyone from a TIR to a veteran teacher should feel part of that community. And I think we work really hard at the middle school and throughout, the entire Windward school to make community such an important thing, because then it allows you to accept where you are as a student, and buy in a little bit to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the first step in a lot of times in opening yourself up to learning. Yeah. The other one that I live daily is growth. I mean, we do things methodically here at Windward. I think change is something that we always look at very closely before we do it. Yeah. And I think that's important, but I also know we've grown in a lot of ways, not just in enrollment, but growth is good for an organization. Yeah. So I think we do it in such a tempered way that it makes it a success for our teachers and for our administration. Yeah. That is the key to keeping it the way it is. Mm-hmm. And commitment. You can't do anything if you're not committed to it. And I think, we find people who are committed to the mission of the school. It's you can't miss how defined it is, the mission. And it's one that I believe strongly in, and have seen its success over time. Yeah. And so I think commitment is huge. Yeah. And I so appreciate that. And actually in sort of the idea of kind of preparing for a conversation, I wanted to kind of write down, something that I felt like, that I see in you. Because as we've had these conversations, some folks have a slightly different value that kind of feeds into one of our big 4.
But for you, I actually wrote down community because I do see that. Like I see you living, breathing that every single day that you're here. This idea that we put kids first, but we show up and support everybody else around us. I think it's just such an important part of that. Because I do think we are, as a school, I do think we have a very special sort of space here. Our kids come to us having had some real setbacks and not feeling connected to an educational environment, and parents not feeling heard in the process of vocalizing their concerns for their child or what their child's needs are. And so we are a space where we get to show up in partnership with families and work together for a common goal, and that is really in service of our mission. And so I just really appreciate that perspective. And we've been working over the last few years to really even think about deepening that sense of community, because we have, as you pointed out, we have families who are here on average about 4 years. So we have a very small window. We're not like a typical independent school where you come in pre-K and you stay through 12th grade. So we have to really be super intentional about the process. We have to be thoughtful about how we show up. And we've been opening our doors a little bit more to have parents in for different events and cocktails after, some school event, and trying to kind of create a little bit more sense of community. And one of the things that, I know you talk about a lot, and I've shared a lot of, parents are going to find, their kids are going to find friends the furthest from them in Westchester, right?
True.
If you are in Irvington, where I live, like your best friend's going to be over in Stanford, or maybe way up in Rockland County, right? So, because we do pull from such a large geographical area, both on parents and on staff. Folks like yourself, we've got a fairly long commute in the morning. Were you at like 45 minutes to get in here?
About 50 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's not a small amount of time, and our parents do the same. And so it is hard to kind of weave that. And I really appreciate the intentionality of your work to do that in your building and in the school at large. So, and you did talk about this idea of growth, and at any given time, we have a lot of things happening, that we're trying to kind of reflect on, get better at, grow in. This year, we've had some fun stuff. We've been having conversations about our one-to-one at the middle school and the role of educational technology. And as I've said so many times, not supplanting the work we're doing and taking away something, but really kind of working to enhance and think about what do our kids need whenever they're going to leave us for high school. So there's always a lot that we can be talking about. So what's like one or two things that you're actually focused on right now from a Westchester Middle School perspective that you're trying to grow it or get a little bit stronger in?
Well, I think, the goal for the one-to-one program really, as you know, came from talking to alumni and knowing, we want to make that transition easy. We know no matter what school they go to, there's going to be transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
I talk to the students all the time about, your teachers are not going to know you on day one. You're going to have to let them know who you are. You're going to have to quickly figure out what their expectations are. So if we can eliminate some of the other things that are burdens on their transition, I think we're doing them, a good service.
Yeah.
And I think technology is a big one, because I think at the time when they get into school, whether it be after 7th or after 8th or 9th, technology is the world.
It is.
And I think there's no teacher that goes back and says, let me tell you how to do this.
Yeah.
It's more of expected. And so in those conversations with alumni, we tried to really narrow down what kinds of things they were doing and how we could adapt to it. And again, to your point, without changing what we're doing, but making an added part of it. Yeah. I think it's been a great addition. Students were using laptops in school for the last few years, but there was always that transition of, like, we do homework at home as a reinforcement of what we're doing in school, but we weren't using computers. So you might have learned something, but you then couldn't go home and practice it. So I think that it's big that we're sending them home so students can actually practice those techniques, get used to teams. How do you submit homework? How do you have communications with teachers if you're having difficulty? And I think that, we also do that in our Gains program, which is our 8th grade student support class. And it's really about helping them of what they're going to need to know when they leave Windward. And understanding that they have to be their best advocate. And they can't expect teachers elsewhere to just know, to read a file. Nobody has a file like us. Where we know who the students are and we know their needs and we're ready to serve that purpose. So I think the one-to-one has been a great addition. I look forward to the 6th grade getting on board, and I really look forward to starting in September.
Yeah.
Doing it right away, but I know it takes time, and so I feel like we're finally there.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. The other one for me is really a goal of myself of just continuing to build community. I think one of the things I didn't mention before is that when I started here many years ago, there were probably 4 athletic programs.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that time we did have a drama program and student council. That was it.
Yeah.
And over the period of time, athletics grew, but we didn't really have anything after school as options besides that. So in the 6 years that you've been here, we've been putting in more clubs that for students who don't want to participate in sports, from Dungeons and Dragons to photography to portfolio club to dance club. I mean, that we've really tried to add as many as possible for students who want to stay after school but never had the opportunity. And I think that helps to create that community piece and give them an opportunity to grow. And I have to say, Dungeons and Dragons, it was a phone call with a parent 3 years ago, and they were just like, well, my son really likes Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, man, I haven't heard that name since I think I was in middle school. I didn't even realize people still played it. And then when we asked the teachers, there were 4 or 5 that were like, yeah, I'm in.
You got a bunch.
Consistently all year long, there are at least 20 kids that participate in it. It's become a huge club.
Yeah.
And, I learned my lesson of making sure that we check it out with the student population before I say, no, we're not going to do that. And, it's really been nice to see the kids be there in the afternoon and doing different clubs. Yeah. So I think that's just a nice way to build community.
I could not agree more. I think that, one, I just have to give a big shout out. I know you're part of our athletics work, Marilyn, and the team. We have an amazing physical education staff and a lot of great coaches here. Like the way they identify, strategy to help kids grow, and like seeing ourselves not as like talent, sort of like seeing that kid's really good, but saying, oh, how can I help you grow? And you can enter really at any point having no experience. Sometimes I love that when kids show up and have never played basketball on a team before, and they're here, they're doing it, they're loving it. In our athletics program, you have a lot of undefeated seasons, like our girls lacrosse team, their first season, like crushing it. So I don't think people, one, understand the quality and depth of our coaching as much as we really need to have them understand. Our folks are doing some great work. But we also have kids who aren't, your typical athletic kids, that we still want to make sure those kids are feeling kind of connected and integrated in our community. And that's where like the drama comes in really well, or the D&D club, or the photography club, or the portfolio club, and trying to help them think about their high school art experience coming up. So all that work, I just think, is so important to kind of really round that out. And I really appreciate you taking that leap and really pushing on that a little bit, because it does. We want those things to kind of organically come from kids. And I love when kids have an idea, show up, and really work to execute. We've got some newsletters, that are getting published right now. I do have a bit of a dream for the lower school to have like a really adorable, news broadcast on a every few week basis. Once we maybe get the basement remodeled, we can have a space for that. But like that kind of stuff I think it's just really fun for kids, and it gives them a little bit more agency in the process, a little bit to exercise some creativity that they may not get to do in our language arts class every day because they're working on some really hard skills for themselves. But I just think it's really important, and I really appreciate your lean into that. So thank you for everything you've done for that.
And I probably should mention, at this moment, Betsy Hooper.
Oh, yeah.
We've had a lot of different theater directors over my time here. We used to do all of our productions in the cafetorium with seating of maybe 50 and expanded into an auditorium. And because you're there, but the shows are just incredibly done. She includes anyone who wants to be part of a production, and the talent is just unlimited and amazing, because it's not always the students who speak up in class the most, but yet they can belt out a song like you wouldn't believe.
I tell you,
and it's amazing.
I couldn't, again, this is another space where, and I feel like Betsy's tired of hearing me say this to her, but every time I come to a production, I am absolutely blown away. I think she and her team have done an amazing job of really cultivating kids in that process. Sometimes like in spaces, especially middle school or high school, the focus is on everything but the acting in that space. Like they're these beautiful sets. It's like they have the real tree, and they're going to bring out a real horse for this scene. Like it's just it can get a little crazy. But what our team does is really have a wonderfully well-established set that's super modular, and they do a great job of that. But also, like, the focusing gets to be on the kids and the development and the voice. And I pop down sometimes when they're doing rehearsals, and watching her, like, kind of in the team kind of coach the kids up. It's really, I would honestly put our drama program against just about any high school outside of maybe some kind of creative and performing arts high school where they've got like Broadway pros on there. But like, I brought my daughter to Guys and Dolls. Was it 2 years ago when we did that one?
Yeah.
And we had a young lady who did a solo who I had talked to so many times in the hallway at the middle school, had no idea this, like, what I felt like was like a Broadway level voice living inside of her. And my daughter heard when she started her solo about, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds in, you could just watch Edda's jaw drop because this young lady commanded that space with just such like grace and elegance, but also like this incredible power of her voice. And Edda leans over and she was like, I am so glad that I don't go to school here, because I would never get another part ever again in any production, because these kids are amazing. It's just a testament, I think, to the team, to the quality of the work that they put in, but also to the incredible gifts and talents that our kids have here. So couldn't agree more. She deserves all of the glow up that we can possibly give her in that. And I'm excited to see the production this year.
Me too.
And we have a lower school one tomorrow night. I'm
Yes,
also
we do.
excited to go see that one. So we've been expanding our drama efforts, starting a little bit earlier in lower school now, and doing a little bit deeper work on that. So that way we create a bigger funnel heading into the middle school to even strengthen the program more. So all good stuff. As we kind of finish up here today, I think that, I'd love to ask a question, because this work, to be quite frank, this work is hard, right? I don't think anybody on the planet would ever tell you leading in a school community right now is easy. I also think leading in an LD school community is like an extra layer of complication in terms of the profiles, the backgrounds of families, in terms of their experience in schools. We have to do a lot of wraparound, right, to make sure families are feeling seen, supported, and heard, kids are feeling seen, supported, and heard, supporting our faculty from a professional development standpoint. It's a complicated, when we say like reading is not rocket science, well, I'm not sure I would agree with that statement. Reading is kind of rocket science, right? And all this work to make this program go requires so much thoughtful dedication, attention, and it is like it's really hard work. And so with that, the old adage, like, we have to put on our own oxygen masks first, right? And I hope that you're doing a little more of that. I've been on a journey over the last year and a half to do a lot more of that, 2 years, to try and get myself, because you get into a space where it's so go, go, go. And we forget that we are human beings who need to recharge and refresh and do what we need to do to keep ourselves in that really good physical and mental space. So what does Chris Eberhard do in his downtime to kind of make sure that he's taking care of himself and recharging to be ready for work on Monday?
That's a great question. Well, I would say that post-COVID, because I don't even want to remember those days, there was no time to do any of that.
Yeah.
But it was also a pretty rewarding time, because we were able to get our kids back in school. So I will say that I think we did an incredible job watching other schools completely fail at it. I think Windward was the top of the class. But other than that, I mean, for me, sports have always been something that's part of my life. I love to play. I can't say I was always the best at anything, but I loved competing.
Yeah.
And that transitioned into coaching, as early as, I guess, as soon as I graduated high school, I was coaching Pop Warner football. Yeah. Took on a head coaching job because I wanted to be with the kids and teach them the skills that I had learned. And that just transitioned. And as I mentioned, when I got here and met Marilyn, I can't say enough great things about Marilyn and her leadership and all she's done for the programming, growing it and teaching others what to do. But coaching was a key for me. I think it's an outlet for me to see the kids in a different light, to be able to be on the floor or on the field. I've gotten to coach soccer, softball, lacrosse, basketball here at Windward. over the years. I did take a little bit of a break, and I want to personally thank you for letting me go back because I do think it's been great in a lot of ways. One, being with the 8th and 9th graders that play basketball, the boys, is really a great way to connect with them and really help them grow. And we do have a student this year who's playing for the first time, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he went out for the team. He has learned so much, and my goal for him is to be able to play pickup basketball with his friends and know the rules and know what to do.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing I think at Windward that I've noticed over all the years of coaching is that all of our good players who understand the game teach the kids, the ones who don't know what they're doing, and try to lift them up. And if they don't, we have a conversation about it. So I think it's really a growth mindset of, we're just going to try and be the best person you are or player you are. So that's my big self-care is coaching, I think, at least during the year, because it is very busy, as you mentioned.
We got a few things going on.
And the other outlet is my family, spending time with them.
Yeah.
They're a little older now, so you don't see them as frequently.
Yeah.
They're both still living at home, so one came back from college, graduated, and he's working, but he's still around, so that's nice. And my daughter is at home, so spending time with them on the weekends is a lot of fun, just finding things to do.
Yeah.
And I know people would probably think I'm crazy for saying this, but I love the spring through the fall. I don't mind doing yard work or going out and painting something. I feel like that just kind of therapeutic. It's not doing what your day-to-day is.
Yep.
And then, self-care in general, I most people know I get here at 6 a.m.
You do.
It's when I started to beat traffic, but it became, I could get my work done, and then I could be outside for the kids to say hello in the morning. I think seeing them and trying to pick up their spirits and see that I'm there too is fun, and get some smiles and some fist bumps. And we added a little music this year to keep it peppy. And then also be able to see them throughout the day, in the dining hall, when I'm not in a meeting, making sure that I'm out in the halls, so that when I'm telling teachers what to do or that we need help doing something, I can say, I'm there too. It's not like I'm just telling them. I never wanted to be a principal or a campus head that just closes the door and never sees people. I had plenty of those when I was growing up. I don't even think I knew who my principal was in middle school and high school because you never saw him. And I clearly just didn't want to be that. So my self-care is really getting ready so that I can see the kids, because they're kind of like a therapy in
I would
itself.
agree.
And we deal with a lot of meetings. And so the relief is being able to meet with the kids, or even events that we do with the administration where we don't have to be talking about just school related issues. Those are reliefs for me. And so I think self-care is important. I think I've taken a closer look at it over the last few years to just make sure I'm finding that time. But it's not easy, and you know that more than anyone. But I do encourage myself to take breaks and find something else to do on the weekend, as I'm sending out some emails, and Jane will remind me, like, what are you doing?
What
go
are you
back,
doing?
go enjoy your day. So
It's good
I
to have
find
Jane in your life.
Jane is the most incredible assistant that a person could ask for. She knows what's going on all the time and can answer a lot of questions for teachers, so that if I'm not available in the moment, they know what to do. But
I do appreciate that you talked about the idea of like yard work and some of the stuff that we get to do that's so outside of our day to day. I happen to love that stuff as well. I come from a long line of, DIYers, plumbers, electricians, miners, and all the mechanics. So like the idea of working with my hands is such a good therapeutic thing for me. Remodel some houses, but like I love when I get to like see the kind of the blanks at the start of something, whether it's like I'm cleaning up the yard or I'm doing some gardening or whatever it happens to be. You have a project, you have a start and you have a stop, and you get to look at it when you're done, right? And you get to think like, my hands did this. And I do think it's really, I think we need more people in the world who appreciate that side of the work, because it's so different. Like so many things that we do on a day-to-day basis, there are some pieces that have some definitive start and stops, but most of it's real iterative, Okay, we do this and the process is not going to run, but I've got to clean the process every now and then, or look at the process to make sure that we're doing, in the same way we started doing it. But but it's just such a different layer of work. And so, but does clear my head a lot.
It does.
And I also can really, really identify from the campus side of things. Like that's one of the things as a head, it's been one of the hardest things about the work. Like I got into this work because I love being around kids, right? I enjoyed going to the place. Like I remember one of my favorite trips and when I was in middle school, working in public middle school, was the DC field trip. Like my hand was the first one up every time that who wants to go to, like, I'll go 2 days and on the bus, like it was like a 12-hour bus ride. So this was a miserable experience from a human being standpoint, right? Like it was hard. But I loved it so much because it was like a great opportunity to get to know the kids. When I was that building leader, I knew every kid in the building. If a parent stopped me in the carpool line and said, "Can you talk about my child's academic growth in 10 minutes?" I could do that, right? Because I knew enough about the work. And, in my work now, like we have 1,000 families that we across 3 campuses, and I get to know a lot of kids. Sometimes it's kids who want to know me. And so they make a beeline to kind of find some ways to connect. And I love that. But I still like to pop into classrooms and science and go down to see the sports teams play. But it really is. It's a different layer of connection, and I miss that intimacy that you get to have with the day-to-day. But I just really have a lot of respect for that campus leadership and the work that you do to make sure every kid feels that seen and that sense of kind of connectedness to the work. And I do think being out every morning, being at the stuff, showing up at lunch, because I see you every time I go down to lunch, you're there, chatting with the kids and making sure the day-to-day goes smoothly. So just, Chris, couldn't thank you enough. Really appreciate you're willing to sit down and have a conversation and share this with the community in a big way. So thanks for everything you do, my friend.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And keep it up. I can't wait to see what the play holds this year. And how some of our sports teams finish up on their season. So
yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.